Thank you, Councillors Smith and Hughes. We'll get underway. So we've probably got about 10 minutes left just to tidy up in this space. So I'll hand back to Marley to lead us in. And then, as I say, we will be getting some of that input from councillors that have sat on those JMAs, just so the rest of us can get a bit of a feel of what things are actually like in practice in that space, and how potentially things are working, and what improvements maybe that those people that have sat in that space could suggest. So thank you, Marley.
Thank you, Chair. So prior to the lunch break, we covered off a number of things: treaty settlement obligations, joint management agreements, mana whakahono arohe. What we haven't got into is the Marine and Coastal Act, but we will come back and have a conversation about that. And also some of the other broader obligations to involve Māori under the Local Government Act and the Resource Management Act and other acts, other pieces of legislation. So watch this space. We'll schedule some more time for those conversations. There's a bunch of you today sitting around the table that have had practical experience in the previous term in the co-governance space, and also working alongside iwi in different contexts. And so, as Warren said, now would be a really good opportunity to hear from you what went well, what didn't go well, what we might want to work on, so that this coming term, when we do start meeting with our iwi partners, we can make sure that we've got the right support in place, we've given you the right information, and we've taken feedback into account as we, I guess, carry on that work through the term. So over to you. Is anyone willing to share?
I think what I'll do, Marley, is I know Jennifer's got some thoughts that she'd like to extend to us. Then perhaps, Robbie, I'll come to you just for a bit of a piece about how you found things, short and sweet, and then Noel, probably the most recent with the Waiora piece, and how you found that process. So
okay. I think the key point I want to get across is that there was that slide before about the relationship and the operational. And so our role when we're on a joint management agreement committee is to go and have a relationship. And something I heard once was somebody defining, no such thing as a business to business relationship. It's a person within a business who has a relationship with a person in another business. So I liken it to that. When you're sitting down at the committee table with the 3, 4, 5 different people, I can only encourage you to get to know them as people, and it becomes less of a regional council and iwi in your mind and an us and them, and it becomes more of a trying to understand where that other person's coming from. I would, although, remember that we are from our organisations, and therefore there are topics like at the very start of the workshop today, where we're getting into some nitty-gritties that experts in legal stuff much more than us should work out. You don't need to solve those problems. And for example, Marley's mentioned to us plenty of times, where the exact boundaries of an area of interest are is not something for the regional council to take a view on. That's settled somewhere else. We are the vehicle with which the Crown has to deliver on something they signed, right? And so it's about that relationship. And so the work will come to us in the agenda. What I think worked really well was that we've started pre-briefings for certain committees like that, where the regional councillors come together who are on that committee beforehand, and anybody else can join, obviously, and have a look at the agenda, have a chat about anything else you want to ask a silly question about, or we could discuss tikanga and when do you stand, when do you sit, when do you sing, for example. I think that's really helpful to not make things awkward when you're not used to being in that space, because I certainly knew nothing about iwi before I was on this council 6 years ago. And now I feel like I know more than the general population. There's tairanga whenua to give us certain bits of education, and then there's Kataraina and Tipa to give us other contacts, the dynamics that are going on, but not to confuse the two. It's probably something that they would appreciate from what I've heard them say in the past. The work on the actual committee is just to collaborate with us, people to people, to figure out how we're going to achieve the objectives of both organisations in a way that fits at the time. I would also just say governance only time has been incredibly effective. Saw it with the Waiwara committee happening not long ago. We have little catch-ups before the meeting so we can have some time together, and that just helps with that relationship. And you can just have the chats to just move things forward, because it is always, as you can see, so formal. And our iwi partners are frustrated by the formality of the Local Government Act as much as we are when we join this organisation, and they hate wasting their time because the capacity issue keeps coming up over and over for them as well. So if we can get stuff done together that's actually worthwhile, then I'll keep turning up to. And the last part was just be conscious of the fact that they are partners through that process that we've gone through, not just stakeholders. So sometimes they will have a partner process that is more than the general public through that settlement, right? So, and that comes with a certain expectation when you think of your partner versus, say, your friends or something, that there might be less surprises, that you might contact each other. I mean, I think this training I've gotten to a point where I'll just call up one of the members of the committee ad hoc to say, hey, have you heard about this? I mean, that's the kind of behaviour that you display in a partnership, rather than having to wait for a CE to remember or the chair to remember, and we can all just work on that partnership together, that's all. So I think I'll leave it at that, because that was plenty, but that's been my learning so far.
Thanks, Jen, and really valuable insights, I think, for those of us that will be walking into that space, having not been there before. So it's just really good to hear. Robbie, you don't have to add something if...
Short and sweet, but I'll start with the frustration first. It feels like at times, what are we trying to achieve? Because it just seems to be ground so slow that nothing seems to, but we all understand that we're in local government, right? But that seems to take, because it's in local government, then it actually takes a slower step again. So it's quite frustrating. On the committees that I've been on, like Kanapanapa, first meeting I go to, I think they had like 180 or 220,000 left in their bank account after starting to pay some of the cost of setting up their management structure, or the catchment structure. And I said, why isn't it on term deposit? I'm thinking that term we've earned about $60,000 out of that money, so that's at least keeping up with inflation of what the costs are going to be to implement the stuff. So me and Mike pushed for that on the first meeting, I think, and that went through straight away. So, just that alone helped that little committee keep its momentum going forward, that it wasn't going to run out of reserve money by the time we got to implementation. I think we have more things in common than we don't. We were after a better environment and a prosperous. I think that they feel that way most of the time. So I think it's really important we look after what we have, the same ideas, and make those important, than actually divide us on the things that we don't agree with. I think that's really important. And as I said before, just be open and honest. I think when we got into that Waiwara committee, when we were open and honest and actually said what we don't align with, they actually said, let's just get on and have a chat, which is a better way than actually hiding your thoughts and your ideas, going, are they going to ask this question? Are you going to ask that? Just get on with it. just be open and frank. And I think they respect you being open and frank in that environment, because it's supposed to be safe to have that chat. And it's up to the individual to do it, but it's you.
Thanks. No.
Yeah, thank you. And I was fortunate enough to be in a position to chair the first meeting of the Waiora Committee after the first one failed, through no fault of anyone's really. So I just wanted to do something different. And I approached Maria Nepia, who's the co-chair for iwi, and said to her that I felt like just chucking everyone out of the room and just the 10 of us having a chat. And she said to me, why don't we? And I think it was the best part of the discussion that we had. And so far as, and this is probably sharing some things, and is this online or not? Well, I won't say it then. But the reality is we could be more open and we didn't felt managed. And that came out in the conversation. And so the barriers were broken down on that first, and it was a very, very heart-to-heart, some hard-hitting conversation. And I know some, including Robbie, were put on the spot and asked, what does this mean? And even challenges from within the same team, which was interesting. So there was some real growth immediately within that committee that we wouldn't have got had we had everybody in, and people wouldn't have been as comfortable. So I think the people in the room ended up being the right people, and they had the mandate, as we did, to take matters forward. And I think from the acceptance of the proposed changes to the terms of reference, their governors saw the benefits and understood what was trying to be achieved, and we're all on the same side of the equation. So look, I think it's, for what that committee has been set up to do, it's the right way to do it. 5 individual discussions versus 1 and everybody on the same table. And one of the learnings that we learned was that we need to sit down and, as a team, discuss, because they certainly do. Whereas regional council hasn't been that good at meeting prior to meetings, and we're all can ask questions and understand what the document's coming before us. So I see it as absolute subset of, but I think that Waiora Committee could actually be the guiding committee, the leading committee amongst all the JMAs, although they won't replace the JMAs. But what can disseminate back? I think we need to hold on to and cherish that model at the moment, and look forward to building on it. So yeah, I don't know whether there's anyone else in the room. Robbie, you with it? Yeah.
I'll just add a little
Thanks,
bit.
Noel.
I think the most learning from that discussion was, especially a lot of pressure was put on me and Mike, that would we support this? And we'd go, oh, it's a little bit far for us. And they'd go, okay, would you support that? And me and Mike had to have a little discussion on the side, and we go, yep, we can just support that. And then they said, well, we're happy with that. So they wanted to come to a consensus at what council would get over the table. They didn't want to take it too far that we wouldn't support them. So they're looking for us for leadership and guidance, going, we can feel comfortable or not.
Thanks, guys. And it's that co-governing, I think, as Noel touched on earlier in the day. Yeah, that's a big key around it. So yeah, just some questions for anybody that's interested, that is going into that space that hasn't been there, of the 3 that have just spoken. Yeah, Keith.
Yeah, so just going back to you, Noel. So you talked about the 10 staying in. Who were the other people that went out?
So it's staff, even our own chief executive.
Yep.
We kept Jordan in the room for the note taker.
Yep.
But basically the bench of the staff and iwi chief executives and support staff,
Yep.
the room was absolutely full because it was the inaugural meeting.
Yep.
But the 10, or Maria and I, initially said everyone out, but I think all 10 of us believed it was the best thing. Once we'd had the argy-bargy, if I'll put it that way, and got beyond, and we got to the nitty-gritty, it really is important, I think, that we continue to do that.
Yep. And so the other question, Noel, is who sets the agenda or how is it set?
The agenda is generally set by staff, overseen by Tracy. So initially there's teams supporting iwi and teams here that meet the JTAG or type committee, the technical people from each area. And I've got one here. Sorry. So there's meetings before the meeting and they contribute and the papers are drawn up and brought back to the governors. So Tracy, do you want to?
Yeah, so the agenda items are generally agreed by the working group of staff that have been back to their boards and gone through the agendas. We had a pre-meeting with Noel to say these are the items that are coming up because it was the first meeting. It was pretty much all the stock standard stuff you'd expect. Each of our iwi members who are on Te Rōpū Hautu, which is the officer working group, had subsequently been back to their boards and said, this is what's on the agenda. Are you happy with that? Yes. So by the time that the agenda's set, both the chair and the co-chairs, the co-chairs and deputy co-chairs of the committee were across the agenda and there were no surprises.
So I met with Tracy and with Marley prior to, because Bruce was overseas for the first meeting.
Thanks, Noel. Ben?
Oh, yeah, I just had a question. I remember in one of the Rapatu minutes, when it came to full council, it noted that a discussion had been held prior to the meeting and then it came through as an agenda item, almost decided. So I just caution about some of the pre-meeting discussions that if it's actual item for recommendation, it should not, well, that's your difficulty, isn't it? I mean, what are you discussing pre and what is actually an issue that's LGA type?
Yeah, and can I put it to you, Ben, that we also have briefings before meetings, and whilst we shouldn't be making decisions, sometimes it's a good idea to have a discussion. And I'm not defending it, but I understand it clearly. No meeting should reflect that there was a pre-meeting that had a secret decision and it's been brought forward.
Yeah.
So the way that's a learning on how our democracy guys actually write the minutes in future.
Yeah, and it was quite an ad hoc one-off type thing as well. Like it was an unusual meeting.
Yeah, no, thank you. Just a couple of things I have said on some of these JMAs in the past, but for those that are sort of jumping on into the committee, mostly just, I think Keith, you're probably the one that, and Gary, you're the alternate as well, but just reading that JMA agreement in advance. So the original agreement that's signed, have a good read, because that pretty much tells you what it is that you need to know and what the purpose is of you being there. The agenda setting, I've found it in the past, it's largely an opportunity for councils to report what they're up to, what's happening now on the ground, what's coming up. So it's sort of a heads up, but there's hasn't been a lot of like controversial items. It's largely just information. So yeah, there hasn't been the need to sort of separate or have a, like Noel was talking about, to have a sort of just governor sort of meeting, and this has just been my experience anyway. And the only other comment I wanted to make was that sitting in those meetings is great, but it's actually a really good opportunity to learn more about the individual iwi by perhaps attending their pokais. So they've got an annual pokai on marae, and learning more about where their marae is, understanding who is the greater hapu in that area. So somehow creating that relationship that goes beyond just that JMA meeting. So going beyond, probably it's, it is a full day, I get that, but it's worthwhile. I've always found it exceptionally, just really enriching, actually. Yeah, some of those marae are absolutely beautiful and some stunning locations. So if we can find out where they all are and perhaps extend that invitation to maybe even other councillors and whoever might like to attend, I think it's worthwhile.
So Warren,
Thanks for that.
can I just add something?
Yeah.
I was an alternate to the Waikato Tainui JMA, but I attended everyone so that I knew what was going on. But the reality for me, and I articulated a couple of 3 times, was that I saw them as telling sessions, council telling iwi what we had done. And I wasn't overly enthused about that and wanted to see what Tainui was bringing to the table as well. But this, after all, is a JMA about the operational side and what council does in relation to the agreement. So maybe I had it wrong, I don't know. But the last time I spoke up and said, is this really how this should be done? Jackie Collier, who is the co-chair of the Waikato Tainui committees, absolutely flatly disagreed with me. And she said during this last 3 years, it's the best relationship and management of the agreement that she had seen in her time as one of the leaders of Tainui. And she is on the board, if I remember correctly. So it's a matter of perspective. And whilst I think I'm sort of on the same page as where Liz started to go, we've got to see it as from both perspectives and be careful, bring your own values to the table and seeing it from their perspective. And this is the partnership issue. So, getting onto them, yeah, sometimes you might sit there and think, what the hell, where did those 4 hours go? Should I have been somewhere else? But actually, you've got to understand what the role of your position is. Thanks.
Thanks, Noel. Right, I think we'll wrap it up there. So I'll just go to Marley for closing, and anything she wants to add in, next steps or how that may look, and then we'll jump into the PC1 plan change.
Thank you, Warren, and thank you everybody for your time today. I really appreciate your participation, all of your very good questions. Clearly, there's more conversations to be had about a number of things, and I've taken note of that. In this wrap-up session, it was really useful to hear the aspects of the way that we work with iwi in the co-governance space that we should keep because they're going really well, but also some of the things that we need to perhaps work on. What I was really pleased to hear is that there's a good understanding around the table that the key to the success of the way that we work with our iwi partners is actually the relationship, not just about what we're talking about inside of the formal meeting. In fact, it's all those things that probably happen outside and around those formal meetings that really build the foundation for a successful relationship. So thank you for sharing that. And also the other thing that I picked up is through experience that you as individuals have had in the co-governance space is that we've actually got far more things in common once you get into these discussions and actually, I guess, are open to those conversations. So thank you. Lots of goodwill, lots of good faith around the table.
Yeah. Sorry, just one last thing. There is a Tainui summit coming up that I'm aware of, and I just wondered, Marley, if you might be able to find out. It's an economic summit, and I just wondered if you might be able to find out what is involved, but it's run by Tainui, and perhaps if we can get some attendance there, elected members. Yeah. And it's the one that we heard about at the thing last week.
Yeah, a really good example of all of the good things, I guess, that iwi organisations are leading and things that the regional council too are really interested in. So thank you for making a note of that, Liz. We'll make sure we connect in with Waikato and then back with our councillors on that kaupapa. No problem. But other than that, I'll leave it there for now so that the next team can have a go. So I won't close with karakia. I'll leave that to you.
Finish, yep. Thanks. Thank you very much, Marley. So we'll get Tracy and her team up next. Just while Tracy's getting herself sorted, please, councillors, make sure that you've responded to